All right, we're back here on the MCU Rewatch Reviews podcast. Today we're talking the final installment in the MCU. 20-something movies later, we finally arrived at Spider-Man Far From Home. Super excited to be talking about this one today. I actually have not seen this movie, or had not seen this movie, until I first saw it about a year and a half ago, until I rewatched it to review for this podcast. And we got a great cast of characters on the line here today, as we always do. Chris, welcome on back. The Doc, back here on the show to talk Spider-Man with me here today. Chris, how's it going, man?
Going good.
And we got Connor for the first time here on the MCU Rewatch Review podcast. Connor, my good friend, you're on the Twitter machine. You're pretty much everywhere, my man. You're doing some great stuff. You know everything there is to know about Spider-Man, Venom. I thought you'd be the perfect person to come on here to the show. And we've actually discussed the first Spider-Man movie before, that being Homecoming about a year ago. So I thought it'd be cool to get your 2 cents on this one, too.
Yeah, I mean, you'll probably get a little bit more than 2 cents, probably about a couple dollars, but let's go for it. Let's get it.
That's what this show's all about. So, again, I was really excited to be rewatching this one just because I haven't seen it in about a year and a half. There was a lot of praise for it. And it actually is, as of this recording, as we speak, in late September, the final Marvel movie that we've gotten. Due to the whole pandemic, Black Widow just got pushed back to 2021. I think WandaVision is still coming out in December. I may be wrong on that. I thought it was coming out before the end of the year. We'll see. But if it doesn't, we're getting no Marvel stuff this year, which sucks. But yeah, rewatching this movie really kind of opened my eyes to a few different things as that I didn't really notice the first time. But is it weird, Karna, I'll start with you. Is it weird to not be getting any Marvel movies since this one came out a year and a half ago?
I mean, not particular. I think that we probably could have used a break after Endgame. I think letting things cool off for a little bit was probably the smartest thing they could have done. Maybe Corona kind of forced their hand on it, but I think it might work out for the better because when Black Widow does eventually hit theaters, people will be more excited to go back than... Well, it's hard to tell just because the Corona is making everything so complicated.
Yeah,
but
for sure.
I think it was wiser. It would have been wiser to do a cool down period of about a year after Endgame because so much shit happened in Endgame.
Yeah, no, for sure. Do you think this was the right movie to follow up Endgame, or do you think that kind of reset period that you mentioned, which I completely agree with, should have come after Endgame as opposed to Far From Home? It was just more. Was it more a matter of timing with the movie coming out in the summer or whatever?
I think it was a matter of time thing. I also, when I say it after Endgame, I mean, this is a pretty good, epilogue to Endgame because we'll find out because I'll talk about it ad nauseum during this whole thing. I really don't like that Spider-Man, his character in the MCU, has just been reduced to Iron Man's simp. I really don't like that.
Yep.
It kind of takes away from his own character. So I think this was a good way to hopefully put a close to that part of his character. And the sooner I can get that, the better. So I was more than willing to see this come right after Endgame as a little epilogue to the final chapter that was Endgame.
What about you, Chris? What were your thoughts on the fact that this movie followed up Endgame, and this is the final Marvel movie that we've actually gotten to this point, and the final movie in Phase 3 of the Infinity Saga?
I agree that it would have been nice to have a cool down after Endgame, but if they were going to follow up such a serious movie for Marvel, it was good that they did it with something that had more of a comedic tone. So I do think that if they're going to follow up something so soon, that this was the right movie to do it with because it had a completely different feel from Endgame, which at this point, anytime you can put two Marvel movies out that don't necessarily have the same tone, that's good. Because a lot of Marvel movies have started to sort of meld together and feel like the same thing.
Kind of going back to when the movie was released, so it came out in July of last year. Endgame came out in April, early May of 2019. This movie came out almost exactly 2 months after Endgame did. The trailers for this movie were available as early as March or February, right before Endgame. Did you like the fact, Chris, that they were already promoting the movie even before it? Obviously going into Endgame, we all knew everyone was going to come back, but as of Infinity War, Spider-Man and all of his friends were dead. Everyone was dead. Everyone was dusted away. Do you think that kind of took away from it, that the promotion period kind of conflicted with the fact that they were already dead at that point before Endgame had ever come out?
I mean, like you said, everybody knew he was going to come back, especially Spider-Man, because he was such a new, young hero in the world, and we already knew that they had more plans for him. would have been nice for them to hold off until after Endgame to release that stuff, yes. But I get that it's corporate stuff and they needed that promotion out there at a certain point, and that's just the world we live in.
No, it makes sense. Did that bother you at all, Connor? Or sorry, go ahead, Chris. You can finish.
But yeah, no, it didn't bother me so much. I just think it's one of those things that's like, it would have been nice, but it's not a game breaker for me.
No, that makes sense. What about you, Connor? Did that bother you at all, the fact that there were previews for it even before Endgame came out?
I mean, not really. I mean, I kind of have the same opinion Chris does. I mean, excuse me. I mean, you can't promote a movie in like 2 months. Like, you can't do all the promotional shit. And you can't, obviously everyone knew Spider-Man was going to come back. In hindsight, everyone knew everyone was going to come back. You knew Scarlet Witch was going to come back. I'm trying to think of all the heroes that got dusted. You knew Black Panther was going to come back.
The Guardians.
The Guardians were all going to come back. I mean, they're not going to blow, those franchises down the shitter for the sake of a hook. But, it is what it is. I mean, you knew Spider-Man was going to come back. I mean, they're not going to kill Spider-Man, period, until, maybe 10 years from now, maybe. But
yeah. So going into this movie, before we kind of found out from the later trailers what this would be about, did you have any expectations for who the main villain or what this movie would be about, Connor? Because even before we knew about the Blip stuff and Mysterio, I don't think Mysterio was in those initial trailers. I don't remember. But do you know what you were thinking when you first saw the trailer, the first one?
I think he was. He was in the first trailer I saw, Mysterio.
Okay.
And I remember seeing the water... what they called the elementals in this movie.
Yeah, I think they called them the elementals, yeah. Or it was at least referred to them, yeah.
I remember seeing the water one and the earth one, and I remember thinking, oh, they're going to do Hydro Man and Sandman, too. Yep. Which I really hope that they don't... I mean, Hydro Man can go fuck himself. But I really hope that they didn't just say, oh, we had the earth guy, and that's Sandman enough. I really hope they don't do that, because I think Sandman would do well in a Sinister Six type movie. So I hope they didn't blow Sandman on this. I really can't stress that enough. But I mean, I was really surprised how many people legitimately thought Mysterio, once he was announced, was going to be a good guy.
Yeah, how many people actually bought that? I mean, it was pretty common. Really?
I mean, like, there are some, like, especially on Twitter, like, people after the movie came out, I can't believe Mysterio was a bad guy. He was so nice. And I'm like, Jesus, man, there's been fucking 60 years of comics to spoil that shit for you, dude. Mysterio has never been a good guy.
Yeah, exactly.
And cartoons, like...
Yeah, like, there's been 60 years of, like, media that should let you know that the fishbowl is a dick.
I was going to say, like, I purely go off of the movies and whatnot, but even I knew going into that movie that I heard a lot about Mysterio and the character and the fact that he was a Spider-Man villain, that he wasn't going to be a good guy the entire time. It was obviously just planting the seeds for that eventual turn to the dark side, so to speak. But
I mean, just because Jake Gyllenhaal's hot doesn't mean he's going to be a good guy. Jesus, guys.
Well, you mentioned the Sandman, so real quickly, Connor, do you want to see another incarnation of the Sandman just because that third Spider-Man movie did it so poorly 10 years ago?
Well, no, that's the thing about Spider-Man 3 did Sandman great.
You think so? Okay.
Because Sam Raimi loves Sandman. It's kind of like I was talking about earlier in the pre-show. Dave Filoni with Grievous. Dave Filoni did characters that he liked. He did them great. Ahsoka was great in Clone Wars. Grievous got fucked, just like Venom got fucked in Spider-Man 3. So Sandman was great in Spider-Man 3. I think that I would like to see him again because I don't mind Sandman because he's a good Spider-Man villain, and God knows we need some actual Spider-Man villains in the MCU because all of his villains so far have basically been Iron Man villains that he was too lazy or dead to deal with. So I would love to see Sandman as kind of a first wave of villains that actually have an issue with Spider-Man.
What about you, Chris? What were your thoughts on Mysterio being portrayed as the bad guy, being slotted as the main bad guy for the film? I mean, obviously, being a big comic book guy yourself, you were probably thinking, okay, he's obviously the main villain in this movie. It's not going to be the Elementals. That's basically where this is going. It's more a matter of how he, turns heel, so to speak, as opposed to, being a bad guy from the get-go, right? That wasn't much of a surprise to you either?
No, and I even predicted the whole, he's responsible for the elementals, because in most storylines, Mysterio isn't a former Stark scientist. He's a former stuntman and special effects expert.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought that was still the route they were going to go, and that these were his special effects things that he was doing. And that is sort of the route they went. They just had him being a former Stark scientist instead. But one thing I want to mention is there's a scene where they're in the hotel, all the kids, and Flash Thompson is like rattling off information about these different people that have been discovered with powers.
Mm-hmm.
And he mentions a guy named Morris Bench, who is Hydro Man.
Oh, I forgot about that.
They do kind of establish that somewhere out there Morris Bench exists, and that Hydro Man is a possibility.
I mean, Hydro Man is the one. Is because I know there was the fire elemental too, and there's Molten Man is also a thing that they could have done, but I don't personally care too much for Molten Man, but yeah, they could do. I forgot that line entirely, so I'm happy that you brought that up, because that kind of
it's just one of those
revives
tracks that, like, there's so many in this movie too, and that one I think flew by a lot of people because everybody was just calling Flash an idiot and
I mean,
not taking him seriously.
MCU Flash is a bit of an idiot. I'm on a huge Discord server for Venom and Symbiote fans, and MCU Flash is they fucking hate him because if you don't know, Graham, Flash Thompson in the comics, he does a lot of growing up, and he and Peter become good friends. He goes off to Iraq and gets really injured in Iraq, and he actually becomes a major host of the Venom symbiote for like 8 years, I think he was. And Agent Venom is one of the probably the second most beloved incarnation of that character, and people are bullshit that they just turned Flash into basically like a dweeb cyberbully. That sucks.
That's what I was going to say. So when I first saw the first movie, I know the name Flash Thompson had sounded familiar, because didn't they hint at him being involved in the initial Spider-Man movies, a decade or so ago? Wasn't he a bully of Peter Parker, or no?
He was in both Spider-Man franchises.
Oh.
In the first one, he's played by Joe Manganiello, who played Deathstroke at the end of Justice League.
Chad.
He's a Chad.
He is a Chad.
Yeah, and he was like that werewolf guy in True Blood.
Mm-hmm.
Like the main werewolf. I forget his name in the show. I haven't seen True Blood in years and never plan on watching it again. But yeah, so he looked like he was 30 years old already, so him being in high school was hilarious, but he would have been like the perfect person to actually play Agent Venom. The kid that they had in the first one, The Amazing Spider-Man, he was actually a good Flash too. He had that whole bully vibe down really well.
He also had the best. I would call him the best Flash in terms of characterization, because he has that little scene where, after Uncle Ben dies, he just sort of he's like, "Oh, Peter, I'm not trying to fuck with you right now. I'm trying to be." He has actually a nice moment with him where he's like, "Hey, I'm sorry."
Absolutely. And then at the end of the movie, you see him come up in the hallway and put his arm around Peter and hug him like they're friends now.
So it's like that was probably that kid.
Only thing that movie did right.
Yeah, maybe if he bulked up a little bit and became a little bit more of a Joe Manganiello Chad, but he could have done Agent Venom. But we're stuck with, I think the guy's name is Tony Ravioli or something like that.
Yeah.
Tony Revolori, yeah. Tony Revolori.
Well, I'll mention this quickly, because I know we went in great depth about this when Chris and I had reviewed the first Spider-Man movie, Homecoming, a couple of weeks ago with Tony, actually, Chris. So, what are your thoughts, Connor, on? Well, you mentioned Flash. What'd you say?
You had Tony Ravioli on the podcast.
A different Tony, actually.
Okay.
Coincidentally, that would be cool if we had him on the podcast, just to shit on his character. So when we were talking about Homecoming, we went on this great rant. More so, not the Tony that we're talking about, a different Tony. And Chris, because I'm not overly familiar with the comics, MJ and how she's portrayed. Zendaya, is that how you pronounce her name? Zendaya?
Yeah, one or the other.
One or the other. So she is the MJ. Chris was not a fan. Tony fucking hated it. What are your thoughts on that character in the movies?
I fucking hate
You hated too.
She's not Mary Jane. She's Michelle Johnson. So I think that's right. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah, her name's not Mary Jane in the movies. Yeah.
So I don't like her at all. I don't like that Peter just in this movie especially just automatically starts simping for her. I think that's fucking retarded. She's unlikable. She has this air that I think everyone knows or knew a girl like this where she acts like snarky and like mean. It's like, you know, like she wants you to think that makes her like intelligent and different and quirky when really you're none of those things. You're just being a cunt. So
I know what you're saying. Yeah.
Well, this movie also, like,
they had to walk that back because they wanted you to believe that Peter Parker would like this girl, but like the first movie, that was her character. Her character was like trying to be that quirky, smarter than you, pretentious bitch, and I'm just like, damn, they're.
Yeah, the first movie kind of made her into like that sort of outcast character, but like in this movie, she has like a favorite flower because of a murder. It's like, that's some goth shit right there. And she's not a goth like character, so it was just really weird the way they characterized her in this movie. Like, I know what you're talking about, Connor, where she's not coming across the way the film thinks she is, and it was just, it's just weird. And I hope at some point they do eventually bring in like a Mary Jane or a Gwen Stacy as like a different love interest, because the whole Zendaya thing just isn't working for me.
I think Michelle Johnson would work if Peter Parker was more high school comics Peter Parker, where he was just like this dweeby little kid with glasses, and he looks like Peter Parker in the comics when he was in high school. He looked like an incel, basically. So I think it would work more if Peter was like that, but Tom Holland plays Peter like a fucking Chad, dude. Tom Holland, if that kid existed in real life, that kid would be running the school. Because Tom Holland's Peter Parker he's intelligent. Let's be honest, Tom Holland's Peter Parker is good looking.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying.
So that kid would be running shit if he was a real high school student.
Yeah.
They did a little better job in the first movie making him kind of dorky. I felt like this movie, they just abandoned all hope, because it's like, he's getting pretty buff, guys. We can't really keep showing that he's a nerd.
He's becoming too powerful.
How important is the character Betty Brant in the comics? Chris, I'll start with you.
Well, it depends on which version of Spider-Man you're talking about, but I think most people would associate her with Elizabeth Banks' character from the original trilogy with Tobey Maguire as J. Jonah Jameson's like assistant.
Yeah.
But in this movie, the whole thing she has with Ned, like the first time I saw it, that made me laugh my ass off. And then the second time I saw it, I was just like, they really had so many opportunities to do more with her and Ned, and they totally failed. Like, that could have been the best part of the movie, and they dropped the ball.
From like a storytelling standpoint, or like a comedic standpoint?
A comedic standpoint.
Okay.
Like, that actress was really funny every time she was on screen, and I wanted to see more of her, and they didn't follow up with that.
Yeah. What about you, Connor? What were your thoughts on the Betty Brant character and the Ned relationship too?
I liked it. I liked it a lot because I think that it's like that's a high school relationship. Like,
it absolutely is. Yeah, it's so
you're like head over heels for 3 weeks, and then you're like, I'm bored.
Yeah.
That's exactly what that was, and I really liked that. I mean, Betty Brant in the comics is, at least in the mainline comics, the 616 continuity is she's kind of like a tertiary character. So, I'm not particularly, it's not like their characterization of Peter, their characterization of, Uncle Ben or anything like that. I don't really mind if they kind of do some creative liberties with her. So I think, she definitely isn't like a high school student with Peter. I think she was working at the Daily Bugle when Peter first met her.
Yeah, I think she's a little older than him. Like, she's in college when he's in high school, and then
she's got the cougar thing going on.
Yeah, but she's a good character.
Yeah, but on the topic of kind of spinning off into Ned, I didn't realize this until a couple months after I first saw the movie. Do you think Ned, they're going to try to parlay Ned into some sort of Hobgoblin type deal? Because Ned Leeds is the Hobgoblin originally.
I hope they don't go that route with him.
Actually, I don't see them doing it because Ned is just not Ned. I don't see Ned as the Hobgoblin.
No, he's too supportive of Peter to ever have that heel turn. Like, there's no jealousy with that character.
Mm-hmm.
He loves the fact that Peter's Spider-Man and that he knows the secret, and he'll do anything he can to help him. They've never implied that he would ever go heel, so I hope they don't do that.
I hope he stays the guy in the chair, personally.
Like, he's basically... so, I'm not that familiar with the Miles Morales comics, but I know that his character is based on Miles' best friend from the comics.
Mm-hmm. Gank. I think Gank or Gonke. One of I don't know how it's pronounced.
He's Into the Spider-Verse movie. He's his like roommate that doesn't talk and is just on his computer the whole time. And then like at the end of the movie, they show them becoming friends.
Mm.
So, I don't think they would go down that route. I think they just gave him that name because it's like comics appropriate, like people will recognize it, but I don't think that actor could pull off being a bad guy anyway. People like him too much.
Mm.
It seems like... Oh, you wanted to say something, Connor?
No, I agree. I mean, I just thought I didn't pick up on the Ned Leeds connection until after I had seen this movie for the first time. So I was just wondering, since Chris seems to know about the comics, I was just going to ask him about that. I don't think they're going to do that either. It's just, I just thought, no, they gave him that name.
It seems like with this movie specifically, not just with the Betty Brant and Ned thing, but you guys also mentioned Peter Parker and MJ. You got the Aunt May and Happy Hogan relationship going on. There's a lot of simping, like you said earlier, Connor. There's a lot of simping going on from this movie. First from Peter.
The simping from Happy Hogan is totally appropriate. MCU Aunt May can absolutely get it. They had no business making her that hot.
What were your thoughts, Chris?
Doesn't that make so much more sense, though, than her being
like 100 years old?
I mean, if Tom Holland's that young, yeah, I mean, it definitely makes sense, but...
Like, it never made sense to me that Aunt May was the age that his grandmother would be. So, like, I like the fact that they aged her down for the movies, and I love Marissa Tomei, so, like... seeing her in anything is never going to make me upset, but her and Happy, like, that just makes sense, especially because they didn't go down the road of Happy also being in love with Pepper Potts, because that's a big thing in the comics, is, like, even though he's Tony's best friend, he's also in love with Pepper.
I did not know that.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, they didn't do that in this, and I'm glad they didn't, and I'm glad that they're giving Happy something to do now that Tony's gone.
As am I, because I'd really rather not see him with... I think Gwyneth Paltrow is done with the MCU anyway. She's too busy selling her vagina-scented candles at Goop.
Yeah.
What? Wait.
She doesn't even know what movie she's in anyway, so...
Graham wants us to back up.
Yeah, I do, actually. Where did that come from?
That's a real thing.
What is the story behind that shit?
Gwyneth Paltrow, her side hustle is a health and wellness company called Goop. And Goop is basically a company where they sell you healing crystals and shit like that. And Gwyneth Paltrow released a candle, I think in like late last year, and the candle was called "This Candle Smells Like My Vagina."
What?
By Gwyneth Paltrow. You can look that. I encourage you to look this up. So yeah, Gwyneth Paltrow, she dropped the MCU and is now out there selling vagina candles.
I mean, she's had Goop for years. She got in trouble like 4 or 5 years ago for advertising these jade eggs that women were supposed to walk around with in their vagina. Numerous health experts came out and were like, "This is not good for you. Do not do this."
You're gonna get topic shock syndrome.
Like, I think she might have gotten in trouble with the FDA or something because she was promoting it as like a medical thing when it's just, it's complete snake oil salesman quackery.
That's ridiculous.
She's got some insane shit. I've seen a lot of articles written about her site over the years, and some of the stuff they sell is just like rich people crap, like an $800 bowl made of super rare wood or something like that. Then every once in a while they release something that's supposedly like a healthy thing for women, and it's usually not.
That is fucking weird. I never knew that. Wow. I know we talked a lot about Gwyneth Paltrow in the last in the Homecoming review. I did not know about that though. So that is interesting. So we'll transition from that, I guess, and we'll while we're on the subject of the cast, I want to mention this because I think we talked about this briefly in the Homecoming review, Chris, because you got Mr. Dell in this movie as well. J.B. Smoove, I think is how you pronounce his last name. In addition to Martin Starr as Mr. Harrington, I think they're one of my favorite parts of the entire movie. Them as like the chaperones on the trip. I absolutely love the addition of those guys to the cast.
Oh yeah, they're both funny actors. I thought a couple of the scenes in this movie with them were a little unnecessary or a little forced. They were trying too hard to make them the comic relief. Mm-hmm. But I do like both actors, so it didn't bother me. Like pairing them up together was funny, so it worked. But
yeah. Oh no, sorry. Go ahead.
There was a couple moments where I was just like, just go back to Spider-Man, like kicking ass. I don't want to see these guys in the middle of a fight.
Do you think this movie, kind of on a broader note, do you think they focused too much on comedy, or do you think they could have incorporated more serious parts, or was it the right balance in your opinion?
I think the overall movie struck a good balance because they've established that the Spider-Man movies are very much comedies at this point. So,
well, I would say they comedies, but also the tone. I kind of want to. I came in here with like a notebook, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna bring these points up. They're like John Hughes movies with superheroes.
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, that was a comparison I heard a lot for the first movie, especially.
The Breakfast Club and the Pretty in Pink and 16 Candles is just throw Spider-Man into those, and that's what these are. Which, again, it kind of ties into my point about MCU Spider-Man and like my feelings towards it. That's great, and people love John Hughes, people love Breakfast Club, people love Spider-Man. Throw them all together, and a lot of people love that. You're going to lose the integrity of one of those three things in that mix. Yeah. But.
No, you can't please everyone, so I totally understand that. But I did like them in the movie, though. I do agree there were some parts that probably didn't need to happen. I think my favorite part, though, was when they were on the plane, when they were like rearranging the seats and whatever, and Peter ended up having to sit next to Mr. Harrington, who explained to Peter that he thought he lost his wife in the blip, but then she ended up in reality just like leaving him or something like that with someone else, and she pretended she was dead. I thought that was great. But kind of on that same note, going back to what you were saying earlier, Connor, about the blip and the explanation, there were a lot of questions coming out of Endgame as to how, okay, does this make, like, my younger brother now older than me if, I blipped and he didn't? Where does this leave the kids? Where did they come back to the same spot where they blipped? How do you think how good of a job or not as good of a job do you think they did in explaining that whole blip thing?
I think they did as good of a job as they could have done. I personally think the 5-year gap in Endgame was way too fucking long.
Yep.
I think that's way too long because after 5 years, it would be more detrimental to bring those people back than it would be to leave them gone. Because the world would have started to like progress and stuff. I think maybe a year probably would have been a decent time jump.
I agree.
But I can't fault Far From Home for a mistake that Endgame made. You just have to deal with it at that point. That being said, I think some of the questions are fucking hilarious. Like, what if you got blipped on an airplane? Are you just if you come back in the exact same spot where you were 5 years ago, doing the exact same thing?
Yeah.
There are some hilarious fucking implications. Like people who like. If you were driving your car on, like, fucking 95, are you just going to spawn back in the middle of the fucking highway? Mm-hmm. I think you're going to have people spawning in the middle of 93 and immediately getting fucking exploded by trucks.
Yeah, exactly.
The Russos talked about this. Did they? They said that when Hulk snapped to bring everybody back, his part of it was that he wanted everybody back safely. So, like, if you were in a plane, you ended up back on the ground. If you were on a boat in the middle of the ocean, you were on a beach instead when you came back. You came back in the same spot if it was safe for you to come back in the same spot.
Oh.
Interesting.
But you got to imagine that a lot of people, like, were blipped on the toilet.
Oh, I was going to say, and then somebody is, like, in the bathroom while they're just...
Yeah, like, taking a shower, and then now somebody else is occupying that house or apartment or whatever, and then all of a sudden you have this intruder in your shower.
What if...
You imagine being in the shower at the same time? It's like, hey, how you doing?
Yeah, exactly.
One thing
like Joey from How You Doing?
I heard somebody talk about a hilarious scenario. They're like, what if somebody got blipped in the middle of giving birth to a child?
What if the child got blipped?
Like,
just comes back into the womb?
All of a sudden, this mother is back in the ER, like, giving birth and nobody's around to help her or something. Like, it's just a lot of weird scenarios that I really do hope they address in some of the future movies. Like, I want to hear some of the weirder stories.
Yeah.
Well, the blip in and of itself is just so interesting, because does Hulk also bring back the people that died because of the blip that weren't blipped themselves? Because there were people like flying in planes where the pilots got blipped. Those motherfuckers are dead. Does Hulk bring that plane back?
Probably
does he
not.
have the power to bring that back?
Yeah, I don't know. That's something they'll probably have to talk about at some point.
There were doctors that were performing surgery at the time of the blip that got blipped, and somebody died on the table. So, I mean, does that guy get brought back?
And is he brought back, like, mid-surgery? Like, does he just appear with his chest cut open?
He's just chest cut open, awake.
Yeah.
Like, there are... I will say, getting off the topic of Spider-Man for a minute, I think it's extremely unfortunate what happened, like, with Chadwick Boseman. I think, but I think that if they had known what was going to happen, they could have just made it so that he didn't come back or something like that. I don't know what they're going to do with that, man. I don't envy whoever has to come up with a solution to that continuity problem, because you're never going to find an easy thing to do with that. Like, someone's going to be displeased no matter what they do. Good luck to whoever has to make that call.
Yeah, we talked about this. We reviewed Black Panther a couple of weeks ago. We were kind of giving some of our thoughts on what they might do. Do you think... I think we just agreed that if they took the Leia route from Star Wars, that would be the wrong way to go. I think.
Oh no, I don't want to see CGI zombie Chadwick.
Yeah.
I think my opinion, the best thing to do would to be a tasteful off-screen death, because everyone's going to understand. No one's going to be like, oh, you should have given him an on-screen death.
Exactly.
You don't want to see the character die again after the actor died, even if, like, my friend Sean suggested, like, oh, we could, have a scene where he's doing a mission and he's in the outfit and the mission goes wrong and he fucking dies. And I'm like, no one wants to fucking see that.
That's terrible.
No one wants to see that happen. So, I mean, I think if everyone would understand if you just did a tasteful off-screen death, maybe you can say, oh, there was a complication with the blip and, he couldn't fully reconstitute or something like that or something. And then, can have somebody else be Black Panther. I know some people really want to see Michael B. Jordan come back and have a redemption arc somehow. He could, I think he has the physicality to do it. He's a decent actor. He could probably pull it off, but I don't know what the fuck they're going to do with that, man. That was a real fucking tragedy. I mean, I don't, I normally don't get too, invested when celebrities die, but like that was a fucked up story.
Yeah, no, it was terrible. We talked a lot about it because we were always going to do the Black Panther podcast. I think that's Saturday, and then literally like less than 12 hours earlier, we got the news that he passed away. We're like, Jesus Christ, this changes everything. So that was a hell of a show for more ways than one. But it was crazy. But I mean, well, kind of on that note, real quick, do you think they even have to kill him off? I think they might just explain. They can do exactly what you just said, Connor. Explain why he's not in the movies, but they don't necessarily have to kill him off. Though I don't know why he would continue to exist but not help out like the Black Panther. It's very, I don't know. It's tough.
He's got to be killed off in some way because he's too big of a player, and not just in the superhero community, but in the world at this point. Like he runs probably one of the most advanced nations on the planet. Unless the other a thing that I thought that they might be able to do really briefly is if they bring in Doctor Doom and he just wipes out Wakanda because he's fucking Doom.
Mm-hmm.
And you could just say that Black Panther was a casualty of that. I mean, again, I don't know. They want to do whatever they want to do. They want to do it tasteful, and I don't know that Doom Death Starring the shit out of Wakanda is the best thing to do, especially because the Black Panther franchise and Wakanda that means a lot to a lot of people. So I don't think that's the right thing to do.
Yeah. I did read a report recently that they had made some preliminary decisions, and I guess he is going to die off screen somehow, but what they're going to do is focus on Shuri for the next movie, because in the comics she does become Black Panther eventually, so that's what's going to happen here.
I'd see that happening. I mean, I feel like they had to have known when they signed him on that he was sick, because I heard he was sick as early as 2016, and I feel like you can't sign he wouldn't legally be able to have signed a multi-picture contract with a terminal illness like that. I feel like the company would have had to have known and had some sort of contingency planned out. As dark as that all sounds, I mean, it's terrible to think about, but a lot of money is in the works with this sort of thing, so they probably did know that and have some. They had a fucking couple $1 million life insurance policy on fucking Carrie Fisher, so Disney doesn't fuck around with this sort of thing.
That's
go ahead,
Chris.
It's hard to say because, like, I don't know how. Like, it appears that his condition worsened like very quickly over the course of a few months, and that's why he's gone. So I think it might have been one of those things where when he's first signed up, it probably was in the very early stages and considered treatable.
Yeah, possibly. I know the family.
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know the family had come out soon after his passing, and they had said that they actually said that the only people that knew were like X, Y, and Z, like very close friends and family, maybe his trainer or something like that, maybe his agent, I don't know. They never mentioned anything about Disney knowing, which is interesting. So I don't even know if they did know, because I feel like if they did, they would have already, come up with plans for the next movie. I don't think they knew at all. Be my guess.
I don't know, but if they do keep it going, and I hope they do, focusing on the 3 women that they introduced in Black Panther with Okoye, Shuri, and then, God, what's the other one's name?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about, though.
Anyway, but yeah, the leader of the Dora Milaje.
Yeah. Ah, man.
Jesus Christ, why can't I think of her name? Denai Guerrera played her.
Yeah, I'm looking up the cast right now.
I'm drawing blanks too.
Nakia, is that who you're talking about?
Nakia.
Yeah.
Nakia, Okoye, and Shuri. Those are the 3 characters that they established as like strong female characters that I think if they built the franchise around them, they could keep it going.
Yeah. No, I could see that. It'll be interesting to see what they do. And then as we talk about, Spider-Man 2 and kind of characters and stuff like that, who they might bring back and whatnot, we'll be jumping all over the place here. I just have a ton of notes on what to talk about. We mentioned Mysterio and his role as the villain in this movie. I thought Jake Gyllenhaal did an amazing job. Now, again, for us, it was not really much of a surprise that he was the bad guy in the movie. Like, oh my God, I can't believe... we all kind of figured that was coming. But I think the way that he came across as genuine early on, even though we always knew what the end result was going to be with him going bad and whatnot, I think his acting and the way that he tried to manipulate Peter was awesome. I don't think it was too predictable at all, because they were... I think my only issue with this, one of the things I wrote down, was Fury a little too quick to trust Mysterio, because they made a comment at the end of the movie. Nick Fury and the other woman, Agent Hill. She was like, oh yeah, he had no suspicion whatsoever. Like, he completely trusted him. Like, after the blip happens, or everyone comes back or whatever, he's like, oh, I'm from another multiverse. And they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I mean, I understand why that would make sense, because it did open up other worlds potentially. Like, I mean, we would believe that. But why would why would Nick Fury believe, like, oh yeah, he's from a different world, let's trust him with all of this,
It's not Nick Fury.
Yeah, I was going to say, weren't they Skrulls at the end?
Oh, right.
So
you would have to assume that they were there and in communication with Fury, because at the end Fury was on the mothership, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So you would have to assume that Talos is working with Fury.
It is implied that he's been portraying Fury for quite some time.
Yeah.
So there's this whole theory that Fury's been in space for a lot longer than people think, and apparently the evidence goes back to Age of Ultron. So if you remember in Captain Marvel, when they're talking in the bar, he gives that weird fact about himself that he can't eat toast if it's cut diagonally.
Yeah, and then in Captain Marvel, he cuts it diagonally, doesn't it?
In Ultron, when he's in the kitchen at Hawkeye's house,
yeah,
he
Ultron,
has a piece of diagonal toast and he's eating it. So there's a theory that it's actually been Talos for years, and that after the initial Avengers movie, Fury went up into space to start building up resources to combat whatever future armies might come. So this whole time, Fury could have actually been this Skrull for like several movies at this point, and we didn't know about it.
It would explain why he didn't just immediately get fucking marked in the Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
Like alien physiology. Also, I think that's a great theory, but that is a big plot hole, because when a doctor would when a doctor would look at that body, they'd be like,
But it is a shield doctor.
He's bleeding green.
But these are shield doctors who concealed his death to begin with. They may have known about the Skrull thing already.
Fair point.
Maybe.
What about? It's possible, because Agent Hill is obviously a Skrull as well. So it's obvious that when Agent Hill is there watching over the surgery, she's probably making sure that everything is going according to plan.
I also choose to believe that might not be true, because I really want to believe. I really want the motherfucker moment when he gets snapped. I really want that to be the real Nick Fury.
Well, that's really the thing. So, Chris, we've mentioned before, when the Skrulls die, they become themselves. But because he was dusted, if that was him, would that not happen? Because he was dusted, he didn't actually die? I mean, I guess he did, but you know what I mean?
I guess it's possible Fury has been going back and forth, and sometimes it's him, sometimes it's Talos. So they just announced this recently. They're going to do a Disney Plus series with Samuel L. Jackson about Nick Fury.
Oh, I didn't know. No, that's cool.
They just announced it the other day. So I'm hoping that goes into some detail about what he's been up to these past few years. I don't want it to be a prequel series, because the de-aging tech isn't as good as Marvel thinks it is.
Yeah. No, we'll see. I didn't even know that was being made. It's probably going to be a couple more years until that's made, right?
I would assume it's going to be at least 2, because they have all these other shows that are already in production and finished that they want to get on there first. Yeah,
no, that would make sense. And another thing I wanted to ask you guys, too, when they brought back, kind of on the subject of Mysterio, Peter Billingsley character, I think his name is William Ginter Rivera? I don't know exactly.
Tony Stark built this in a cave with a box of scrap.
That guy, exactly.
Fun fact, that the guy who got Peter Billingsley is Fucking Ralphie from Christmas Story.
He is, You would never know. I didn't know that until like a year ago. I did not know that. I thought that was interesting.
I had that looked up for, because that was one of the things I took a note on, was I was really happy that they brought all those characters back. Like, hey, remember 10 years ago when you were in this movie called Iron Man? Can you come back and be this bit character again?
Yeah.
Good on him for coming back. That was great.
I thought it was cool. Yeah. I like how they kind of went back, and although Jake Gyllenhaal wasn't in the actual movie, but they went back to that scene from Civil War when they were introducing Barr for what it's called in this movie. God, what's the glasses called in this movie?
I don't know. I just called them the NSA glasses.
Edith, yeah. When they showed him in the background watching that presentation, obviously his character wasn't there, but it was kind of cool how they made it look like he was there in the moment, so I thought that was cool too. Did you like how they brought back those characters, Chris?
Oh, yeah. I mean, anytime they can tie back with those minor characters, it just makes it feel more like the connected comics universe, because in the comics there are a bunch of small, tiny characters that are constantly jumping between titles, and it's nice that they have some actors that they've given bit parts to over the years that they can call back on. And it's kind of like how Martin Starr was in The Incredible Hulk with Edward Norton. He's the dude that he bribes with pizza in order to use the computer.
And that's the same character.
Well, there's debate on that, but yeah, it's the same character according to Martin Starr.
Didn't they allude to that in the movie or no?
In the credits of the movie, he's listed as Amadeus Cho, which is a different Hulk character altogether.
Holy shit! I'm just finding this out now.
Yeah, so that would have been weird if he was playing Amadeus Cho, and the fact that they kind of retconned that doesn't really matter because they barely acknowledge that Hulk movie is part of the MCU anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, and that doesn't really surprise me.
I wish they would, because I liked Abomination. He's one of the only MCU villains that's not named Loki that actually lived, so...
Mm-hmm. Well, we've talked about that a ton before.
Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that he's in a cryo cell somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, So he's out there, and he's just been chilling, literally, for like 10 years, so... It would be nice to bring him back, just because, like, they don't even need the actor that plays him, Tim Roth. They don't even need Tim Roth. Just have him come back and just be a CGI monster somewhere.
Do you think we'll ever?
For sure.
Do you think we'll ever? I mean, Chris and I have discussed this a ton before, Connor. But do you think they'll bring back Abomination at some point? Not Professor Hulk. Who am I thinking of? The scientist. Who was it? The leader. Yeah. Who they teased and they never blew that off at all. They never explained that. Do you think we'll see that again?
I hope. I mean, I really do. I don't know that we will, because they kind of, unpopular opinion, they kind of fucked Hulk in Endgame and Infinity War. They basically, the Hulk and Bruce Banner are two different characters. I don't think anyone will contest that. The last time we see Hulk, he gets the shit kicked out of him, and then he never comes back out. And then the next time we see that character in Endgame, like, hey, Bruce Banner personality took over. So the Hulk is effectively dead, and I don't much care for that. I think it would have been better if the Hulk came back out once Black Widow died. I know that the Russo brothers are, like, loath to acknowledge that they were a thing, but, like, I feel like they kind of did the Hulk in particular dirty.
Yeah. Well, do you think they'll give him another movie at some point, or I know it's more out of the movie rights and stuff like that. I think Universal owns the rights to the character or something like that.
I hope that they just take more care with the Hulk if they go forward with him. I don't know if Mark Ruffalo is going to stick around, or if they're going to try to phase him out. Like, it seems like they're trying to phase out Chris Hemsworth, which I don't like either, because I like Chris. He's probably my favorite Avenger. Mm-hmm. It seems like they're trying to phase him out to bring Natalie Portman in, and I don't particularly like that, because couldn't she not be fucked to even show up for Thor 3?
Yeah, she wasn't even in Ragnarok. Well, I don't think she wanted to.
Yeah, like, she couldn't even be fucking bothered to finish out her fucking three movie deal. So, like, why are we gonna bring her back, and not only bring her back as a fucking core character? Like, if the actor doesn't want in, don't reward that. So
I think it's only going to be a one-off. I feel like they're just bringing her back to kill her off or whatever, because I know Chris Hemsworth has signed on for multiple movies. He did go out and say that Thor: Love and Thunder is not going to be his last movie, and he's got like a couple more after that at least.
You got to figure Chris Hemsworth also brings in the wine mom demographic. all the moms out there drinking wine are going to the movies to see Chris Hemsworth take his shirt off.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, he did recently say that he has no intention on leaving the MCU anytime soon. He's loving the way his character is going, so he'll be in the next Thor movie for sure, but I think he's also slated to be in the next Guardians movie too.
I'm so excited for Asgardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
Guardians will be in the next Thor movie as well. I'm pretty sure Taika said, like, you know, there's going to be multiple storylines. We're going to be watching Valkyrie searching for a queen. We're going to be watching Jane Foster become Thor, essentially, which was an interesting storyline in the comics, that if they go the same route with her having cancer, like, it'll be a very depressing storyline in that movie. But I believe Thor will still be rolling around with the Guardians when that movie happens.
Yeah, I'm hoping so. I'm hoping that's the direction they're going in, because I know that was teased at the end of Endgame, and there was some talk about it not happening just because Guardians 3 isn't coming out for a while. But hopefully,
they fucking
Gunn was so busy with Suicide Squad that he didn't have time. But
well, he's only busy with Suicide Squad because Disney fucked him over for like a couple months, and then he went to the competition, and then they brought him back, and he's like, "Oh, I have a commitment already. Sorry, you guys." So the reason we're waiting for Guardians 3 is because Disney fucked it up. So if you want to blame anyone for that, blame Disney or Marvel or whoever the fuck.
Yeah.
Can I just say something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
I really do like Mysterio in this movie. Because I know Chris had brought it up before he started talking about the Hulk and Asgardians thing. I really liked Mysterio in this movie. He was so fucking good. Like,
yeah, I thought he was great.
Yeah.
Not only did they bring back the characters as part of his team, I loved the aspect that he wasn't working alone.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, Mysterio has historically been a special effects guy, and he's, put it all together himself. But when you break it down, especially as special effects have gotten more and more driven towards computers, like in the 60s, special effects were all practical.
Mm-hmm.
So it made a little bit more sense that he might be able to leverage that in an actual physical setting. But I just love how they did him entirely. Jake Gyllenhaal was fantastic, and I was actually really pissed off that they killed him.
Yeah. Well, that's
because,
Well, go ahead.
Because Sony has got a serious hard-on for the idea of a Sinister Six movie, and I would love to see him in a Sinister Six movie with, well, they've already set up Shocker.
Yeah.
I don't think Shocker's going to be in it, though. Shocker's a fucking loser.
Vulture
and Scorpion, and that's half the team right there.
I was going to say, so my next question for you guys was at the very end, after he seemingly dies, I was going to say that he was dead too, but upon going back to watching it, and from what else I've seen people say, when Peter goes, is this real? Or, is he actually dead? Whatever. Did that actually happen? All she says is, all illusions are down. So they never actually say that he died. You're just kind of made to think that he's dead. Do you think there's a chance, I'll start with you, Connor, that you think he could be brought back, or you think he could still be alive?
Well, assuming that he's actually physically dead, and assuming that that's the case, I think one of the coolest things that they could do is that they could have him come back, but as an illusion. Because he still has like a team of people out there that weren't apprehended, and they're still working with the technology, presumably. So they could bring him back, and Mysterio himself be a hologram, which I think would be kind of cool. That Mysterio is an illusion, but man, it would kind of feel like a hollow sort of thing.
Yeah, after he was kind of killed off here.
Yeah, because you can't have that. You could have him for action scenes, but you really can't have the hologram do character stuff, which, again, if they do a Sinister Six movie, the interesting part of that would be those characters interacting and seeing those personalities collide. So you can't. It'd be like a Sinister Five plus, like, their IT team, basically.
Yeah. No,
but
yeah. I could see that.
Let Chris answer the question, but I just, on the topic of the illusions, I have a point that I wanted to make.
Sure. Yeah, we'll go back to that. So, Chris, I'll start with you, or I'll ask you the same question, then we'll go back to that. Do you think he might actually be dead, Mysterio, that is?
Well, even though he was lying about being from a different universe, this movie essentially introduced the concept of the multiverse. And the next Doctor Strange movie is going to explore that further. So we could always get a Mysterio from Earth 97 or something, and it could still be Jake Gyllenhaal, but like the fact that they're going to open those doors up means that we could start seeing not only dead characters brought back, but characters being played by different actors as well.
You brought up Doctor Strange really quick. Do you think that since Sam Raimi is doing that movie, you think one of the multiverses they're going to go into is the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man?
Well, that is a rumor that like Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield were being talked to for something. So
it's got to happen.
Whatever they do, Bruce Campbell has to be in it.
Bruce Campbell as Mysterio should happen. He was going to be Mysterio in the original Spider-Man movie.
Yeah,
Spider-Man.
Struck down before their time.
So one of the weird things in this movie I wanted to bring up really quick while it's on my mind is there are two scenes early in the movie that like are blink and you'll miss it, where Jake Gyllenhaal is in the background watching Tom Holland's character. There's like one of the scenes I think is at the airport. So like he's been tailing him and spying on him for a while, and the camera never focuses on him. But if like you know where to look, he's there.
I thought that.
I thought that was a great little detail that like, because some people were questioning, like, how does he know he's Spider-Man and all this, like, how does he know where he is? And it's like, he's been following him for a while. This is his plan, and there's scenes in the movie to establish it if you know where to look. So I thought it was cool that they actually did that little thing where they put him in, like, you know, a low hat, and he's just kind of hanging out in the background. You don't really notice him because he's not the focus of the scene. And yeah, it's cool that people have, like, found these things and posted them on the internet so other people can see them, because I never noticed that when I first saw the movie. And then once I noticed it, I was like, Jesus, that actually adds to the movie.
That is cool. Yeah, I never knew that.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. Sorry, Connor, you can go ahead.
On the topic of Mysterio, I love all the sequences with him. So, like, the stuff where he's fighting the elementals, and the stuff where he at the end with the bullet time, where Spider-Man actually... First, I think that's the best portrayal of Spider-Sense ever, at the ending right there, in that little tunnel thing.
Yep.
I think that's probably one of the best in any sort
Peter
of...
Tingle?
Yeah, I don't like that they call it that. That's gross. Peter Parker's still like 16.
Hey, like, ribbing him a little bit. Like, that was funny.
Yeah, it might be a rib, yeah.
But the fucking sequence where he is torturing Peter after it turns out that he's evil, I really fucking hate that skeleton thing. I really hate that was fucking Iron Man. That should be fucking Uncle Ben. Which I really don't like that. Like, these movies have completely just ignored Uncle Ben. That should have been. You know, do you not know what I'm talking about?
No. Well, mention the skeleton thing, because I didn't know what you were talking about there.
So there's a sequence where, like, he's having a freak out hallucination where Mysterio is
with the illusions, yeah.
Yeah, it's right after he realized that Mysterio is evil. And part of that hallucination is he lands in front of a giant tombstone or something like that.
Oh,
and
yes.
A skeleton comes out and he's wearing the Iron Man armor. It's like, here lies Tony Stark, and that should have been here lies Ben Parker. And then the Uncle Ben skeleton comes out.
Well, do you think that might have been too much, just because they haven't mentioned him at all? And I don't know if they were going to get into that here, because I know they put his initials on the suitcase, and they actually make a point to show that. It's not like it's an Easter egg, but, like, there's a literal second scene where they show the initials on the briefcase, which they wouldn't have showed that shot, I don't think, unless they were going to hopefully explain that what that was down the road. Do you think in the third movie we might get more Uncle Ben talk?
We better, because here's what we have from Uncle Ben in terms of the MCU right now. There's a scene in Civil War where Peter says something to the effect of, if good people do nothing, then bad things happen. So, to me, that was the implication that Uncle Ben was a thing in this universe.
Yep.
And that they just don't talk about it, which is fine. You don't want to talk about that painful subject, whatever. Mm-hmm. But, we also have the producers of the movie, I think the director and the writer said, we don't need to see Uncle Ben get shot for a third time.
Yeah.
Which, I agree. Everyone in the world knows that Spider-Man is Spider-Man because he was a fuck-up and Uncle Ben died for it. Everyone knows that. So if we had just a little bit of a scene where, like, we acknowledge... We don't need to talk about it verbally, but when you have a character that's getting inside your hero's head, you can address things like that you don't need to talk about, but you can still address them. Mm-hmm. I think... And just Uncle Ben really kind of gets my fucking goat, because Uncle Ben is the reason why Spider-Man is Spider-Man at the end of the day. It's not because he wants to simp for Tony. It's not because his aunt is hot now. It's because he messed up and his uncle died for it.
Yeah.
And you know, there are people who'll say, like, there's this guy I really love on YouTube named Mueller. Mm-hmm. He's the one that, I don't know if I told you, he's the one that did, like, this 5-hour breakdown of The Last Jedi.
Holy shit.
5 hours of here's why this movie is dog shit. And he is very, very, very in love with the MCU. I think almost to a fault, where he thinks that the MCU is immune from any criticism almost because there's no... I don't want to say immune to any criticism. He doesn't really acknowledge the fact that, like, there's an adaptational difference. Yep. Like, he doesn't think that the Uncle Ben thing is a valid criticism. Which, that's fine, but to that, I mean, and there are people who will say that, like, oh, this is an adaptation, it doesn't have to have Uncle Ben. And I'm like, well, at what point does a character stop being the same character? Yeah. Like, if you had a Batman movie where he becomes Batman because he wants to impress a girl and his parents are fine, it's like, is there a point where that's not really Batman anymore? Like, how many things do you change before you change what the character is? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And for some people, that line is going to be Uncle Ben, and for other people, that line is going to be something a little bit less serious. So yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents. I really don't like that, and it just spirals out the fact that I really don't like that so much as Peter's character up until this point has been simping for Iron Man.
Yeah.
I think that he could stand better as his own character.
No, yeah, I agree. Well, there are 2 different points there that I agree with, especially with the Tony thing. And one of the things I had wrote down here was that how that whole Iron Man thing kind of, I don't want to say overshadows, because I understand they have to acknowledge the Iron Man death because it just happened, obviously. But not only that, because I know he was important to his character arc in the first movie, I just don't know if it should be as much about Iron Man as it is. So I agree with that. I feel like they could have incorporated that in this story. Obviously not ignore it, but like, I feel like this entire scene was not about, this entire movie rather, not scene, was Mysterio getting revenge on Iron Man. It had nothing to do with Spider-Man. Spider-Man is kind of just a pawn in the story, I feel like,
Yeah. So, I mean, the criticism that, it was the Iron Man skeleton instead of Uncle Ben, that doesn't really apply. I'm talking about from a sense of the character. Like, if I'm just looking at, and this is where I'd have to give a guy like Mueller credit, just looking at the movies in a vacuum, like, this criticism holds no water, because if the movies stand on their own, that's fine, and Iron Man is a huge part of Tom Holland's character. But to me and a lot of other people, the movies don't stand on their own, and they don't. The source material matters, and Uncle Ben is the reason for everything in the source material. So that's kind of where that whole thing comes from. I think that as far as the movies go, it makes more sense to have Iron Man be so central to the story. But my contention is, and it was a problem that was started in Far From Home, is that Iron Man is too much of Peter's character. And that's, I guess I can't fault Far From Home for this, because it started in Homecoming.
Yeah.
But I just think that the direction the MCU took with Peter's character is a little bit too contingent upon he's more of Iron Man's supporting character. He's more of Robin, if you want to make the Batman comparison.
Yeah, that is a great comparison, actually. Yeah, well, I was going to say, I didn't mind, and we talked to this before, Chris, about how Iron Man was in Homecoming. I didn't really mind that as much. He wasn't really in the movie a lot. He did factor into some stuff, but not a lot. This movie is really about him and his death and how Peter kind of copes with that and whatever. Did you have as much of an issue with that, Chris, with the whole Tony Stark thing? And again, I don't want to say overshadowed. I feel like that might be too strong of a word, but what were your thoughts on his influence in the film?
Well, I felt like the mentor relationship with Tony Stark, I did like it in the beginning, because it's better to see Tom Holland's character actually get some advice and direction from somebody who's been doing the superhero thing for a little while, instead of just being out there on his own. Because these movies haven't established that Peter is a genius like some of the other versions of Spider-Man. Like, he's supposed to be pretty smart, but in some versions of Spider-Man, like, he's just a flat-out genius, like, almost on Stark's level. So these movies haven't established that so much, and having a mentor there to guide him was a good idea. As far as the Uncle Ben thing, I don't know. It's kind of like with Bruce Wayne. Like, I know his parents are dead. I don't need to see it again, so I didn't mind not seeing it. But I agree that, like, there should have been a little bit more acknowledgement of Ben's influence on him at some point. That just would have been nice, and hopefully they do go into that in the third movie. But one of the things I did like in this movie is that when he goes into Iron Man's jet with Happy and he creates his own Spider-Man suit using Iron Man's technology, like, it sort of felt like that was him stepping out of Iron Man's shadow and becoming his own person, because even though he was using Stark's tech, he was creating the Spider-Man vision that he had in his mind. And so the end of the movie, like, he gets rid of all the drones, like, he pretty much kind of gets rid of Edith, it seems like. And it sort of feels like moving forward, like, this movie was a little bit of a tribute to Iron Man, and that was a necessary thing after his sacrifice in the last movie. But moving forward, I don't think that the Stark relationship is going to be as important, because now it feels like he's a fully formed superhero on his own.
I agree. I mean, a lot of my ranting that I just did a couple minutes ago was I was so displeased with the direction they took to start with.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's kind of like with the blip with Endgame. I can't fault this movie for the mistakes a previous movie had. I think, all things considered, this movie, especially at the end, did a really good job of closing the Iron Man shit. I would be I'd be extremely annoyed if the next fucking Spider-Man character, the next Spider-Man villain, is also an Iron Man villain, basically. Because basically, a Vulture and Mysterio are Iron Man villains now. I know that they're Spider-Man villains in every other medium, but these movies have basically turned them into Iron Man villains retroactively.
Yeah. No, definitely, yeah.
I think this movie did do a really good job on closing the book on the Iron Man relationship, which it's in my opinion, it's a book that never should have been started, but this did a good job of closing that out. And I think at the end there, him and Happy are having a talk in the jet. And I think Happy says, Peter says something to the effect of, people think I need to be the next Iron Man. And then Happy's like, well, no, I haven't seen it in a bit. I saw it last week in prep. I thought when we were doing this last week, I watched it then.
Oh, gotcha. No, I know what you're saying, though. He's like, we don't need another Iron Man. I know what you're saying, though. He's like,
we need Spider-Man.
Yeah, he's like, even Tony couldn't live up to Iron Man or something like that.
Yeah, so I thought that's probably my favorite line in the movie, honestly, is that little discussion there. And it's like everything Jon Favreau touches turns to fucking gold, dude.
Between that and the Mandalorian and whatever, Chef too, of course.
So I was really happy with that, especially the ending. The only thing I didn't like about the ending was that he ends up with fucking obnoxious Zendaya MJ.
Was that too anticlimactic when she found out that he was Spider-Man, do you think, or no?
I don't know if it was anticlimactic, because I knew going into the movie that she was going to find out, because Spider-Man's like Batman, where almost every woman he dates ends up finding out that he's Spider-Man. Except for Gwen Stacy, though. Rip.
Yeah.
Dicks out.
What about you, Chris? Did you find that anticlimactic when she found out that he was Spider-Man? Or do you think that was the direction they should have gone in? Not the fact that she found out, but how she found out, I guess.
I mean, I kind of like the fact that they used it as a comedic moment for her character, because that made me actually kind of like her in that moment. Because she was like, well, yeah, of course you're Spider-Man. You constantly disappear. I think she even brings up that, like, all he did was smack Flash and he knocked him out. Yeah,
exactly. He, like, slapped him and then he passed out.
Yeah, when the scene where he's fucking with the glasses.
Yeah, on the bus, yeah.
So, the fact that they just acknowledge that, like, he's bad at hiding his identity, that made me kind of like her character a little bit, because it's like, well, at least she's not dumb, like, because, obviously he's Spider-Man.
I know.
There's that other kid that's like, I don't remember his name, but he was also trying to get MJ's effect.
Yeah, Brad. His name was Brad.
The end is like, how do you idiots not see it? And the teacher's like, you need to calm down, buddy.
Yeah,
that whole thing with that character, I felt was a little unnecessary. Like, making it a love triangle or implying that not Mary Jane, but MJ would even be interested in that kid. Like, that just seemed forced. Like, they're like, we have to have a romantic foil for Peter. It's like, no, you don't. There's enough going on.
Believe me, no one could compete with Tom Holland's Peter Parker. That's a lost cause.
Well,
they didn't do enough to establish that kid wasn't worthy of MJ. Like, the worst thing he does in the movie is tells her that he caught Peter with his pants down with another girl, which isn't even a bad thing. That's just him being honest with her.
He had no idea what was going on.
MJ, I'm sorry to tell you that Peter's a total fucking Chad. I'm more interested in him now.
Yeah. And his name was Brad, coincidentally enough.
His name was really Brad?
It was really Brad, yeah.
I just remembered him as, like, that guy. Like, there are characters that are so inconsequential. I'm just like, oh, it's him.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. But wasn't he supposed... Because he got blipped, and he didn't get blipped. He was actually there the whole time. So he was, like, 22, and doesn't that make her, like, 17 or something? Like,
oh shit, that's another thing of the blip. If you're dating in high school, if you're dating in high school and you get blipped, you come back as a pedo.
That's the thing is, Yeah, he was like 12 when the blip happened, so now that's why he's the same age as them.
Oh, he's the same age. I was gonna say I thought he was like 21 or something because he was in high school.
He's well, they're all in high school. He's in the same grade as them, but like he was a 12-year-old when the blip happened.
He aged while they didn't.
Gotcha.
Like,
No. Yeah, but I thought he was 17 to begin with.
That's
I love that they used a high school news report to explain the blip.
Yeah, that was
They're like,
funny.
we need to explain this in really simple terms. High schoolers also need things explained in very simple terms. So let's just have Betty explain how the blip worked. And that scene of like all the band people showing back up in the middle of a basketball game and getting hit, that was pretty funny.
Is that really a safe location though?
Yeah.
It's safer than an airplane.
I read a post on God forgive me, some people are going to judge me for this, but I read a post on the TV board on 4chan that explained like a horrible situation that definitely occurred because of the snap or the blip.
What?
There was definitely like a woman who had like a horrible abusive piece of shit boyfriend that like beat the shit out of her and shit. And she got blipped. And that woman was like, "Thank God he's gone. I can live my life. Thank you, Thanos." And she found like a loving guy like who takes care of her, and like he gets her life back on track, and like they have a family together. And then one day she's having a great day, making breakfast, like angry fucking banging on the door. And she's like, "Oh, who could that be?" That definitely fucking happened as a result of the blip. There was some horrible shit that happened because of it.
I think better than that. What if that whole thing happened, but he lived in the house with her, and then when he got blipped away, she never moved away, so she was, what if she's with that same guy, and they're sleeping in the same bed, and then he happens to just be in the bed or something like that? You know what I mean? What if they're all just in the same room? I don't know. There's a lot of different ways that can go.
There are horror stories that happen because of the blip.
Fuck the Avengers.
That's why it did not need to be 5 years. There was more damage done. And they even talk about it with, like, I know we keep getting back on the fucking blip, but, like, and I know it's not this movie's fault.
Well, think about, go ahead. I was going to say something else.
The housing, like,
they mentioned that. They showed that.
Thing, like, we thank you. We're trying to relocate people who were displaced. And I'm like, yeah, man. Endgame, Jesus, I love that movie, but there's a really big problem with the 5-year thing.
What about this dude? What if there was a kid whose parents get blipped, so he has to get adopted or something, but then his parents come back? Did he go back to his original parents? What happens?
Who's legally owning that kid? It's the wrong word. We don't own people.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
We don't do that anymore.
It's terrible.
Plus, we're going to have people who come back from the blip, and people who they knew 5 years earlier have died since then.
Yeah, like natural, like dude.
Like
so
some
sad.
75-year-old guy whose wife was still alive when he blipped away and comes back to having a dead wife. Like, that shit probably happened.
Yeah.
Or one of the funnier ones inspired by real life. I don't know if you guys heard about this a while back this year. There was a guy who was a prisoner and he technically died. His heart stopped beating for like 13 minutes or something like that. Mm-hmm. And he's trying to argue that his life sentence has now been completed because he died.
Oh my God. That's literally the storyline from a season of Torchwood.
Is that an actual thing that happened? Holy shit.
Yeah, but as far as I know, that's an actual thing that happens. So, like, there are going to be people, like, that's a legal nightmare because they technically did more than die. They ceased to exist.
So, all right, listen to this. Are either of you guys Doctor Who people?
I know very little about it. I know that there's a lot of contention about the current writing.
Yeah, no, I haven't seen the show.
Okay, so there was a popular character on Doctor Who had his own spin-off, and the show was called Torchwood, and it lasted for like 4 or 5 years on the BBC, got canceled. And then Starz brought it back for one season, like a few years later. And that season dealt with this weird phenomenon that occurred where all of a sudden death was no longer a thing. So, like, no matter what happened to you, you survived. Like, people who were blown apart by bombs, you still see their eyeballs, like, moving around.
Ew, God.
Like, so it's super messed up. And there's a child molester played by Bill Paxton who literally is in the electric chair when this phenomenon occurs. And so he's able to go into court and argue that his death penalty was fulfilled, and he's able to be released from prison because of this.
Jesus Christ. That's terrible. That's an interesting storyline development, but that is terrible. The fact that even was alluded to in real life is scary.
What's weird is the show like put him on this weird like half kind of redemption arc where he like goes around and starts encouraging people to like be better. And then, like,
that character goes on to make Netflix's Cuties.
Well, but, like, then he makes this big sacrifice at the end. So it's like, God, am I supposed to like this guy that like literally has a scene in the first episode where he talks about how he enjoyed chasing this little girl down?
Oh God, that's scary.
Yeah, it was
creepy.
messed up. It was a really weird thing to like have the ending of this weird event and this big heroic save made by the worst despicable piece of shit.
Yeah. Jesus, that's an interesting story arc, but yeah, maybe at one point in the, like you mentioned, Connor, maybe he went on to go make that show, that movie Cuties for Netflix. That would make sense.
You guys watch Arrow?
Did I watch Hero? I actually used to watch that show a long time ago. Yes.
Arrow?
Oh, Arrow. I think you said Hero. No, I didn't see Hero. I didn't see Arrow, but I know what it is though with Amell, Stephen Amell.
Yeah, the guy from Torchwood was a big part of that show too. He played Malcolm Merlin, who was like another archery guy.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, nice.
Arrow was a good show for a while. It got weird towards the end, but
I understand
first
that-
season,
I understand he
couple
did a lot of.
seasons.
I understand Arrow did a lot of flip flopping. Like, I'm going to kill people. Now I'm not. Now I'm going to kill people. Not.
Yeah, and it got a little weird. They had some trouble in the third and fourth and fifth seasons, and then they sort of course corrected towards the end.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I've never seen the show. I know it ended a couple of years ago, didn't it, Chris?
It ended last year with a big crossover with all the other DC shows called Crisis on Infinite Earths, which was actually pretty fun.
I heard about
there was
that,
a bunch of, there was like 3 different versions of Superman and all these different versions of the Flash, and yeah, it was good stuff.
Yeah, I know. I heard about that. That was yeah. You said that was airing on the CW last year, right?
Yeah, which, like, in order to appreciate one of those shows, you almost have to watch all of the DC shows, which became too much of a chore, so I stopped.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Yeah, I have to check them out at some point. Go ahead,
Can I
Con.
just throw this out there?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Like, the one thing that this movie does perfectly, and I can't stress this enough, if it was this scene alone, this movie would have been a masterpiece, 20 out of 10 masterpiece, perfect film.
Uh-huh.
J.K. Simmons coming back as Alex Jones.
That was my next question
J.
for
Jonah
you.
Jameson. He was out. Not only was he back, he's Alex Jones now, and it was so fucking good.
At the dailybugle.net, no less.
Yes, it's so good.
Well, that's my next question. So as we wind down here, there's a couple more things I want to touch upon before we close out here. We got him back as J. Jonah Jameson, which is amazing. Do you think we'll see him again? Because I heard there was a rumor that he might be in the Morbius movie or in Venom or something. What do you think, Connor?
Well, okay, here's where we get into difficulty when we start talking about Morbius. Because of the deal with Sony, it seems like what Sony's trying to do is they're trying to have the Spider-Man movies exist in the MCU, and the Sony movies like Morbius and Venom exist alongside the Spider-Man movies, which technically means they're MCU, but they never get addressed they're not going to interact with those characters for now.
Mm-hmm.
We would know this if the world isn't in the fucking plague.
Yeah.
We would know this already because Morbius would have come out and Venom would be coming out in 2 weeks. My best guess is that since in the Morbius trailer that came out a while back, we see Adrian Toomes, who is the Vulture.
Yep.
And there was a leak that came out. I don't know if this is a show where we can discuss leaks or potential
go ahead.
rumors.
Go ahead.
There was a leak that came out a while back that at the end of the Morbius movie, Morbius is imprisoned. And the guy in the cell next to him is Adrian Toomes. And the movie ends and he's in prison. He's just sort of accepting the fact that he's in prison. And then there's a mid-credit scene where there's a massive prison break. And nobody knows what the fuck's going on and everyone's breaking out. and then then Morbius breaks out and he sees what's causing the prison break, and the guy causing the prison break is fucking Carnage.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say that was my next guess. Yeah.
So
Venom too, yeah.
Which I think, if I had seen that in May, I probably would have shit my pants.
Because Morbius was supposed to come out in May or this summer, right?
Morbius was supposed to be May.
Yeah.
That got pushed back. Sony's pushing everything back indefinitely because of COVID. But that would have been, supposedly, according to the leak, that would have been the deal with that. And so, again, supposedly, according to the leak, is that the leak / rumor that I keep hearing is that because of the J. Jonah Jameson scene in Homecoming, or Far From Home, everyone in the world thinks Spider-Man's a murderer now.
Yeah.
And my personal theory is that if Eddie Brock from Venom exists in this universe now, he hears this news, goes to take on Spider-Man because he assumes he's a murderer, and then, they do the classic Marvel, they fight, and then they realize that it's a misunderstanding, and then they team up. And my theory would be that at the end of that confrontation, he takes on the spider symbol on his costume as a tribute to Peter.
Oh, okay. Nice.
So would get the Venom and Spider-Man fight that everyone wants to see, but then would also get the Venom design.
I would like to see that. I'm very interested to see what they do with these two characters moving forward. What about you, Chris? What are your thoughts on what basically Connor just pitched? Would you want to see that happen? / do you think it could happen?
Well, my hope is that at some point we get a live-action, like, Spider-Verse, with all the different Spider-Men and Venom. Like, it could be just that Morbius and Venom are in a different part of the Marvel multiverse, and then eventually when they start crossing over is when the characters start to interact.
Okay. I think that'd be pretty cool. I mean, the next Spider-Verse movie doesn't come out until 2022, right?
Yeah, I don't know. They had plans for, like, not only a Spider-Verse 2, but a Gwen Stacy-focused movie as well, so I'm not sure which will come out first.
Oh, I didn't hear about that one. They got a lot of stuff coming out, so that's interesting, because I know they weren't supposed to do a Spider-Man 3 because the whole Sony thing, they got that worked out, so there will be, which is good. Now that his identity's been revealed, Chris, where do you think they go with the MCU Spider-Man from here?
I don't know, because in the comics, he revealed his identity willfully at the beginning of the Civil War storyline.
Okay.
Because he...
Attack or something.
What's that?
Give JJ a heart attack when he's like, everybody shut up, we're going to find out who Spider-Man is. And he's like, oh, it's Parker. And then he just drops.
Yeah, something like that. But he does it in favor of the Superhero Registration Act. And this movie obviously also had him fighting in favor of the Superhero Registration Act, but now that his identity is revealed, it's going to be really interesting to see how they have him handle that, because it's going to change everything. Like, now he can't get the job at the Daily Bugle and be Spider-Man secretly. Like, that whole storyline can't happen.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I feel like they sort of jumped the gun on that, because they're like, oh, we have J. Jonah Jameson back. What's something big he can reveal or something? Like, just have him frame Spider-Man for murder. You don't have to make it so he's revealing his secret identity yet. Like, I feel like they did that too early. And it's almost like they're like, well, we know we're not going to have this character for very long because of what Sony wants to do, so let's just rush through all this.
Okay. Any other thoughts
I feel like
on
it
that?
was a little mistake, yeah.
Yeah, no. What about you, Connor?
I think it worked really well in the moment. Like, it's one of those things in movies where it works really well as you're watching it for the first time. You're like, oh shit, what's gonna happen? And then you sit there and you break it down like, okay, well, this is fucking... It was kind of fucking dumb, because, like, Spider-Man is now an international fucking hero. He helped save the world from fucking Thanos. He's very buddy with the Avengers that remain. There is no, like, he could have fucking Professor Hulk come on and be like, yeah, no, this isn't what Peter is, that this is not the situation you think it is. He could have any one of the Avengers vouch for him, and it's not like he's not going to be able to be safe because he can go into, like, witness protection at the Avengers compound or something like that. Like,
right.
The fact that he is so entrenched with the Avengers...
He can vouch for him.
Yeah.
So there's not like when Spider-Man revealed his identity in the comics, that was a big deal because Spider-Man in the comics, like, he works with the Avengers, but he's really not, like, tight with them. So, I mean, even Pepper would probably help him out in this instance. I know that she probably won't because Gwyneth Paltrow's selling her vagina candles, but like, realistically, like, there's no danger. Like, in the comics, when Peter reveals his identity, like, a week after that happens, Aunt May is shot by a sniper.
Oh my God.
Yeah, just because, like, people knew that they could. I think the Kingpin sent somebody after her.
Jesus Christ.
And that leads into one of my favorite storylines for Eddie, actually.
Uh-huh.
Ooh. You
Eddie
also
Brock.
just reminded me of something.
What's that?
The Kingpin from Daredevil.
That's too complicated. The Marvel Netflix shows are too complicated. We don't even know.
Here's the thing. So the deal was Marvel wasn't allowed to use those characters for 2 years after the shows ended, we're coming up on that. So there are rumors that Charlie Cox is going to be brought back as Daredevil either for a Disney Plus series continuation or for a movie appearance. And if they do that, I hope to God they get Vincent D'Onofrio for the third Spider-Man movie and make him the villain, because Kingpin is a super important villain for Spider-Man too.
I agree, but I think Kraven would be really good too.
Yeah, and I know that everybody's fan casting for Kraven is Jason Momoa, but I doubt that'll happen because of Aquaman.
They don't do cross promotion.
No chance.
I don't know who I'd like for Kraven, but I would like to see. My pitch would be Spider-Man 3, not Spider-Man 3, but Spider-Man Homeless.
Okay.
And it's very easy to incorporate the Kingpin because the Kingpin can hire Kraven because that seems like it's on brand for him. So the Kingpin hires Kraven as like a bounty hunter sort of thing with his gimmick, with his hunter gimmick, and I think that would be the route to go.
I'd like to see
But
something.
then again, they would have to come up with some very good explanations as to why none of the other superheroes are helping him or vouching for him or anything like that.
Yeah, well, they do. I will say, I think they make a good point here. I mean, I know it's the Skrulls and whatever, so they might have been lying, which is why they didn't call them to help with this situation. But Peter's like, oh, where's Captain Marvel? And then Fury or Talos or whatever is like, oh, don't invoke her name, or like, where's Thor? Off-world, and where's blah blah blah? They're gone. Or
yeah,
blah, blah,
I was never more happy in this movie when they said Captain Marvel would not be showing up. Where's Captain Marvel? Not coming. Yes.
You know what's great though?
Goodbye,
that it was
Karen.
The fact that it was Talos makes perfect sense, because him being like, don't invoke her name, like, Captain Marvel saved Talos's family at the end. Like, he obviously has a soft spot for her, and I thought it was cool that he got a little defensive.
Yeah.
Captain, I saw it as something like Bloody Mary. Don't say her name 3 times and she shows up. I do not care for Captain Marvel. I wish you had brought me on for the Captain Marvel episode, because that would have been fun.
What were you gonna say, Chris?
Oh, nothing. Go ahead.
No. Yeah, I was just gonna say. So yeah, Chris and we did the Captain Marvel one a while ago. We didn't praise the movie. We did acknowledge the good parts about it. The person that we had on to talk about it, he's an artist that works with WWE. He was great. We didn't want to completely shit on it because there were some things that it did right, but it's easily one of the weakest movies in the entire MCU. Like, it's not even close.
Like, there are scenes of that movie where she's just an outright villain. Like, that guy walks up to her and says, "Hey, smile, man. Keep your chin up."
Yeah.
And then he walks into the store.
And then she steals his bike, right?
And she fucking robs him.
Right.
I'm like, oh, that's a strictly villainous action. You're out there wearing like a fucking Power Ranger outfit. The guy walks up to you and sees that you're having a rough time. He's like, yeah, cheer up. Rob him.
Yeah. Oh,
the movie presents it like he's the dick. And I'm like, no. No. Absolutely not.
So from vagina-scented candles to shitting
that was more of a Terminator 2 reference, that scene. Like, the director talked about how they're like, yeah, in T2, my favorite scene is when he goes and steals the clothes and the bike from the biker, and I just thought it would be cool if Carol did the same thing.
Yeah, but wasn't the guy he steals it from in T2 like an asshole was trying to beat the shit out of him?
Well, yeah, but they had this guy being kind of douchey, so you don't mind.
A little bit, yeah. I know what you're saying. But, from there...
He's revving his motorcycle trying to impress her. It's like, come on, dude.
Well, he didn't actually do anything wrong, though.
No, but he was being a little just douchey, so you're not supposed to mind that he got stolen from. I mean, he's probably got insurance. It's fine.
Yeah. He got another motorcycle. He'll show up in the second movie with a different motorcycle, and he'll get that one stolen, too, probably. I wouldn't be surprised.
Plus, if I'm not mistaken, was the guy who played that actor... one of the characters in The Walking Dead.
Oh, maybe. I don't know. I'm not sure. That's a good question for you.
I also have issue with Captain Marvel. I don't know if it was fucking Brie Larson reading this line wrong or if it was the direction. But like when Peter has the gauntlet in Endgame,
you got something for me, Peter Parker? Is that what you're talking about?
There were massive sexual overtones in the way she read that line. I'm like, wow, you want to read that, but like less flirty with a 16-year-old Brie?
Yeah. I told Chris this before, but have you seen that? Go ahead, Connor.
People pick up on that a lot, so there's a lot of Peter and Captain Marvel stuff out there. And I'm like, you know he's like fucking 15, right, dude?
Yeah, exactly. Isn't she like 40, 50 now or something? Because she was like 20, at least 25, if not 30 in the original movie, and that was in the 90s. So
yeah, so Captain Marvel is reading that line towards Peter, and I'm like, damn, she doesn't need to get on Epstein's jet to fly. She's already going for them young.
Oh God, what was I gonna say? I asked Chris about this. We were talking about Captain Marvel. Oh yeah, so have you seen that video, Connor? That was that exact line from Endgame, where she goes, "Do you got something for me, Peter Parker?" But then they splice in the scene from Spider-Man 3 where they ask him for the rent, and he's like, "I'll give you rent when you open this goddamn door." You know what I'm talking about, or no?
I love the Toby edits.
It's
great. Part of the reason why I really love the idea of him showing up in Doctor Strange too.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite ones was the portal scene from Endgame.
Yeah, and he shows up. Yeah,
they edited him swinging in, and then he lands and says "pizza time."
Yeah. Well, at some point we are going to review those movies, so maybe for one of those reviews we'll definitely have you back on. In addition to one of the Venom review as well, and hopefully by that point Venom 2 is out when it's not 2025, so we can enjoy that and watch that and review that as well. At some
Tentatively,
point.
Venom 2 is coming out in October of.
I thought it was June.
No, May. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say.
It was supposed to be October this year, but June of this next year is when they're going to gun for.
I heard one funny pitch from somebody once who was like, they just have Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man like return for Venom and Morbius, like just have Tom Holland be Marvel MCU and bring Andrew Garfield back for these movies and make his character better than the first two Spider-Man did.
I've heard that as an there's a lot of things they can do if they really want to be creative with it. They could have a live-action Miles be the Spider-Man in the Sonyverse. But I definitely they want to have Tom Holland. Like they want to have the money. The best option in terms of money would be to have their characters coexist with Tom Holland, who in turn coexists with the rest of the Marvel Universe.
That's why I'm hoping it's all multiverse thing, and like Tom Holland ends up in that universe somehow, and then continues to be Spider-Man after Marvel and Sony stop working together, because you know that's going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
Or Disney will just become this massive fucking bulbous amoeba that just keeps buying up everything and everyone.
Yeah.
Eventually they'll buy out Sony.
They'll buy out everyone.
They bought Fox for the express purpose of the X-Men. They bought an entire company to reclaim one of their properties.
Yeah, we'll see. I wouldn't be surprised at this point. They just keep buying stuff. Even when you think there's some companies that they don't own that they buy that I thought they already owned because they already own so much stuff. But I wouldn't be surprised that that's a possibility at some point.
For 5 years, Disney's gonna own me.
Yeah, exactly. One last thing. Did you like the nod, the PS4 Spider-Man, Connor, at the end of the movie when he's swinging and he takes a picture of himself?
The selfie one?
Yeah, the selfie one. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, it was a nice little moment. I remember that figuring out the selfie thing in Spider-Man PS4, and I thought, what's the most disrespectful shit I can do with this feature? And I ended up there's a if you go all the way up to the have you played Spider-Man PS4?
I played it with you, Chris. Have you played? I think we've talked about this before.
I don't have a PS4, so I'm an Xbox guy right now. So I've only played like 5 minutes of it at a buddy's house one day.
Well, do you mind if I spoil? Do you know the story of the game?
Yeah, I've seen enough stuff about it to where you're not spoiling anything.
Okay, well, at the end of the game, Aunt May passes away.
Okay.
So I didn't realize about the selfie feature until the very end of the game, and like the end game part of it.
Oh no!
I realized what's the most disrespectful shit I can do with this fucking feature, and I went to the cemetery at the very north of the map, and I took a picture in between Aunt May and Uncle Ben's graves, and he's just throwing up a peace sign with their graves in the background. I think that's actually my Twitter profile picture.
Is it? I know that. I know you have that as your profile picture. I didn't know it was the graves thing, though. I'll have to go back and check.
Yeah, if you look in the background, it just says May Park.
Oh, that's great. I know Chris and I were actually discussing a while ago when we first started doing the show, the Friday the 13th game, and he said he was playing it during one of the shows that we were doing, and I know of that game because you used to play the game when I was with you.
I love that game dearly. I actually am probably going to play it again because it's Halloween. The guys who made that game made a Predator game.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, and
I saw a video about that. Is it on Xbox?
It is not. It's on PS4 and PC. But Sony shelled out the money for exclusivity.
I think I'll probably go PS5 on this next round.
I think that's probably the best bet. I mean, the only thing Xbox hasn't right now is the fact that they bought Bethesda, which, they might not even have exclusivity on those games. I can't imagine that's a good business decision to buy pre-existing things and then take them away from people. But the Predator game is fun. It makes me think of Jesse the Body Ventura when I play that shit.
Yeah, we watched that on Halloween. I think the first Halloween that I knew you, Connor. I think we watched that at your dorm, didn't we?
We did, and I was very surprised that you hadn't seen it yet because there are, Jesse Ventura was in it mostly, and obviously Arnold was in it, and it was just fucking peak fucking 80s manliness shit.
That's a great movie. That's another one we got to talk about at some point. But yeah, that was it. I know we went for a while here talking about a lot of other stuff in addition to Spider-Man Far From Home. That's what the MCU Rewatch Review podcast is, and this was a lot of fun. Connor, before we let you go, any thoughts as we ride off into the sunset here? Things people should check out? Any final thoughts on Spider-Man? Anything you want to share, my man? You got the mic.
Oh shit! Is it really smart to be giving me free control over anything I want to say right now?
That's a good point.
I'm kidding. No, I mean, as far as movies go, nothing's really coming out. I'm bumming that. As much as I kind of have mixed feelings, as the more I think about the Venom movie, the more mixed I am. I am bummed that I'm not going to get a sequel to it this year. But other things are obviously taking precedent. Nothing much to say. I mean, my life is just sitting in front of computer screens at this point because you can't fucking go anywhere. So nothing is happening. So
yeah, 2020 in a nutshell. Any winding thoughts? Any closing thoughts, Chris, as we wind down here?
No, I mean, I liked this movie. It's not my favorite Marvel movie. It definitely has its flaws, but I felt like it was a good follow-up to the first Spider-Man movie, and I liked what it did with some of the characters. I definitely think that it's possible Mysterio might not be dead. We don't know for sure, so who knows? But I just felt like the big reveal at the end was maybe a mistake in hindsight.
Yeah, it was a good way to close out Phase 3, and as we enter Phase 4, hopefully sooner rather than later with the reveal, the debut of WandaVision. I think at the end of this year. I guess we'll find out in the next couple of months.
Best girl.
What'd you say?
I said Wanda is the best girl. Wanda's prime, and Wanda's the MCU waifu.
The trailer came out earlier this week as we record this, and it actually looked pretty good, so I'm interested to see what they do with it.
That show looks trippy. I am really hoping that Marvel gave whoever's in charge like a lot of freedom to just make it weird, because she's got some weird powers in the comics, and it looks like they're going full bore with some of that. And I really hope that the whole rumor, because she's going to be in the next Doctor Strange movie too.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be like, he's going to be helping her maybe channel some of her magic, because she doesn't really understand how to control it yet.
Mm-hmm.
Have they said that it's magic? Her powers are very poorly defined in terms of the movies.
Yeah, it's magic. She's just like, so the fact that it's being caused by an Infinity Stone is the big problem people have, because in the comics she's a mutant. She's Magneto's daughter. So the big rumor is that there's a bottle of wine in the trailer, and it roughly translates to House of something, and House of M is a storyline in the comics where she wipes out a lot of mutants, and then a lot of them get brought back. And there's a theory that whatever reality she creates for herself warps the reality that we know as well, to bring the mutants in.
Yeah, it sounds like it's going to be a pretty storyline significant show, especially as far as introducing the mutants and whatever. So if there's any place to do it, it would probably be there, because if it's not there, I think it's going to be probably at least a couple of years, I would assume, right? If it's not in that show.
Yeah, I don't know. The mutants are something that it feels like they want to like slow burn on their introduction. They don't want to bring them in all at once and be like, yeah, they've been here the whole time. They've just been sitting out all these other big tragedies.
Yeah, they don't care.
Well, I think the thing that they could do is another thing they could have said is that the multiverse thing that they introduced, who's to say people aren't coming in from the multiverse that are mutants? They could also say
they could do like the whole combine Earth 1 with Earth 2 and just bring them together.
They could. I have my camera on. I thought I saw something moving behind me. They could have, like, the snap brought so much cosmic energy, it's just activating a latent X gene in a ton of people. There are things they can do. It's kind of going to suck for a character like Wolverine, who his whole origin is, like, he's old as fuck, and he's just always been active in the background. So, kind of sucks for big Wolverine fans, but those guys have already got a bunch of good movies.
The Howling Commando in some stories. He's one of Captain America's World War II buddies in some of the stories. So, like,
that's cool.
Yeah, it would be weird if they tried to retcon that. Like, yeah, he was there. We just didn't acknowledge it.
Yeah, I would hope they didn't do that. That would just be silly.
There's going to be a level of how much are people going to be willing to accept to see some cool shit on screen. Like there can be some undeniably silly shit that goes on, like multiverse, how convenient. But, like, if it means that the canon is now that he was fighting with Captain America, it's like, that's so fucking cool, though.
I mean, if they change history in some way and that's what happens, yeah, that would be awesome. But, like, if they go back and try and retcon it, like, yes, he was there original, just don't say anything. It's like they need to either completely change history or, like, merge two worlds together so those characters were always around, just not on our world.
Well, I don't know if they can keep changing history, because the canon of the MCU now is that Captain America went back in time and did nothing to stop any of, like, the horrible tragedies that have happened since the 40s.
I know, yeah, it's another big...
well,
like
not
Steve
with the way
Rogers...
they established time travel rules. He went back in time, and that's a whole separate timeline that he was in with Peggy. For all we know, he went back in time and stopped all the Hydra shit before it ever got started, and, like, created a utopia, and then came back to our universe.
Why would he come back even?
Why would he want to come back to 2020?
Why he came back a year later?
Belonged to his buddy.
Maybe. Maybe. We'll see.
I just think it's funny to imagine that Captain America is like, fuck the world. Fuck the world. I'm gonna sleep with Peggy.
I've done my piece. I don't need to stop all these tragedies. I've stopped enough tragedies in my lifetime. I'm good. I could just see him stopping after that. But on that note, we'll wind off here. We go from talking about Vegeta-scented candles here to talking about Captain America sitting on all these tragedies. We kind of covered everything on the map here. Connor, this has been great, dude. Thanks so much for coming on, my man.
Thank you very much. And can I just throw one more thing out there?
Go ahead.
The only thing I really hope to see in the MCU going forward is Eddie Brock becoming an Avenger, because it'll piss my sister off. Caitlin, I'm going to share this later on social. Caitlin, if you're listening to this, Eddie Brock is now officially an Avenger in the comics. He has all the Avengers on speed dial. They're in his phone. Yeah, you're going to have to deal with that.
So when it does happen, Connor, we'll do another episode with your thoughts, and then we can fully, out of spite, of course, just to prove it wrong.
I'll pop some champagne for it. Absolutely.
Sounds good. But yeah, we could definitely do one of these again for Venom at some point down the road. And as we were discussing beforehand, maybe do one for Mandalorian Season 2. I still got to figure that out. But if we're going to be doing that, it's going to be coming out after Season 2 premieres.
You got to watch the Marvel Netflix shows too, man.
There's so much stuff to get to. We're going to get to the Marvel shows. Got to get to I've already watched We've all watched Mandalorian. That's just a matter of watching the new stuff. But we got to get to the Marvel shows. We got to rewatch the X-Men movies, the old Spider-Man movies, the Shrek movies solely for Chris. We got to get to those at some point too, just to get your 2 cents. I know you've actually seen part of it, but just solely for the purpose of just getting your thoughts on the trilogy. We need to have that happen at some point. But yeah, this has been great, guys. Chris, as always, thanks for coming on, dude. And Connor, thanks as well. This has been great.
Thank you. Man. Thank you for having me.